Counting double-digit thousands.
People, what's happening? This is your boy CtRacerX. Today is work on a Corvette day. So get your gloves, get your tools, call your insurance, call your wife, call your children. This one's a knuckle buster. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to work on a 2014 through 2019, and this is all Corvettes, so not just Z06s, not ZR1s, not Grand Sports, not just Stingrays, but specifically all Corvettes, LT1, LT4, LT5, where you're going to be changing out an air conditioning pump. This guy right here. Now I know what you're asking yourself. I'm like, why would we change this? And the answer is obvious, right? It's because the air conditioning pump failed. That either means that the compressor wheel went bad, the compressor itself, the clutch went bad, who knows? There's a bad seal, whatever. That's why you're taking it out. You're not trying to do it for lightweight racing. So the question is, how do you get this thing out of this car without setting the car on fire? What you're going to need to do first is get the car completely up off the ground, and you're going to set the vehicle on jack stands on the engine cradle. Now, if you have all data will tell you that you need to take this engine cradle out in order to get this air conditioning out. That simply is not true. There is a way to do it. It is a little bit convoluted, but you will be able to get it out. And you can do it by yourself because, as you can see, I'm by my lonesome. Okay, so here's where the jack stands go. Here's the engine cradle. Here's is that waffle section. So you're going to jack the vehicle up, put it on jack stands, and then what you're going to do is you're going to remove the 18mm bolts that hold the steering rack assembly in. There's two on either side, so just remove those completely. And then you're going to take the two 13mm bolts out of the ABS bracket, okay? What that'll do is allow you to be able to move that steering rack about 6 inches forward in total. It's not a whole hell of a lot, but it's enough to be able to wiggle this pump out of there, because let me tell you, it's not happening if you don't do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to lower the full subframe, and that is not a job for the weekend warrior. Next step is you're going to have to remove the tensioner from the car, and in order to remove the tensioner, you got to take the serpentine belt off. So you put a 15mm socket on the end of the tensioner. You're going to turn it counterclockwise. That'll move the tensioner down. You'll move the belt. Then you're going to take a 15mm bolt out of here and a 13mm bolt out of here. And then that will remove that tensioner from the vehicle. It'll drop right off. It's pretty simple at that point. Okay, now comes the really hard part, taking this guy out of the car. And this is where you're going to need a pry bar and beer. You're going to make up some cuss words. All of this is totally appropriate, okay? So first things first, what you're going to have to do is remove this 13mm bolt, okay? And by the way, I'm showing this to you, the orientation. It is in the car. Obviously, I can't show it to you while it's in the car because there's not a lot of space. All right, and this is also the reason why you're going to be removing the power steering rack or moving the power steering rack forward about 6 inches, because in close proximity to the unit itself makes it impossible for you to lift it out without dropping the subframe. Okay. All right, so this 13mm bolt goes up here. You'll take this one out. It's really long, as you can see. Okay. The next is you're going to take this nut off of here. Now, as you can see, it looks like it's a bolt, but it's actually a stud and a nut. You're going to need a tool like this in order to take this stud out of the block. This is a, I want to say, an E7 Mercedes tool, right? When, you know, 1/4-inch adapter, go ahead and stick it on there. It doesn't require a lot of torque to take that off. And you can remove, actually, you can remove the stud and the nut together. I'm going to tell you, just remove the nut first, and then take the stud out. Once those are free, you should be able to rotate this guy with some force, okay? The next thing you want to do is go ahead and unplug this plug and the compressor sensor plug back over here. So you remove both of those guys, and you'll be good to go. The next step after that will be to rotate this unit as far downward as you can, because the orientation in which it's sitting in the car like this prevents you from really accessing this 13mm bolt here. You won't be able to get a nut. You won't be able to get a socket on that whatsoever. I mean, there's literally this much bracket that bolts, you know, your AC unit to this deal, the piping and all that stuff, and then the frame is about an inch away. So there's not a way to get a tool in there deep enough to get this out without rocking this guy downward. So once you rock it downward, you should have access to be able to get this bolt out. Now you will have to remove the ride leveling sensor. You just have to unplug it and kind of just move it out of the way, okay? And then you'll have full access to be able to remove that 13mm bolt on the back side of the AC compressor housing. All right, so here we go. We're now to the place where we put in the new AC compressor, okay? Step number one, make sure at this point, kind of rotate everything into place. You're going to go ahead and attach the AC lines first. When you go to attach the AC line, make sure you add new gaskets, right? And also make sure you pull out your little plugs, okay? But don't pull the plugs out until you have everything adjusted in place, otherwise you run the risk of dumping out your pag well. Two, make sure that you, on your connector, that you're careful, because these connectors are plastic. If you're sort of wiggling around the AC to put it in place, you can possibly snap this little guy, and you don't want that to take place. The next step also is to go in and you're going to tighten up the 13mm bolt, which is just at the bottom there. It's out of sight. You're gonna have to wiggle the AC compressor around to get it to go in place and start to grab the other side. Then you're gonna put that stud in, which is down there, and the nut on there. That's a 13mm nut. So you go ahead and do the two of those and you'll be good to go. Also, don't forget to reconnect any connections that you took off down here. So the ride leveling sensor, make sure you put that back. Make sure you put the ABS plug back in place. If you dismounted this guy, make sure you remount everything and tighten it to spec. Okay, so we've gotten everything reinstalled. Let's talk about your tensioner. The tensioner doesn't have a particularly unique configuration. 13mm bolt on the bottom, 15mm bolt on the top. Make sure you put your power steering rack back together, two 18mm bolts on the right and left hand sides. Make sure you put your ABS bracket back in, two 13mm bolts top and bottom. Tighten everything to spec as it needs to be, and then reinstall your serpentine belt, and you're back in business as far as being able to check your AC. Let's take a look at the serpentine belt configuration. Of course, you've got your alternator here. Down there is your water pump. There's your water pump, Down there is your AC compressor. And then your tensioner is down in the corner there. Now, this is a little bit more complicated to view because, of course, I've got a Pro Charger in the way. But trust me, it's not a difficult Ford-like belt configuration. So you don't have to do anything that's too outlandish. And I'm sure you can go online and find the belt spec for this Corvette. The other thing is I suggest going and having your AC filled at a shop, mainly because your low side pressure system is behind this coolant reservoir, and that's a pain in the rear end to have to turn the car on with the coolant reservoir out of the way in order to load the system. It's just a pain in the neck. And there's your high pressure system there. Why Chevy didn't decide to put both of them together, I guess they were too cool for all that. With that said, if you want to try it by all means, there's 100 million videos out there. Chris Fix has a really cool video where he basically teaches you how to fill the AC system. I just don't care. It's freaking $75 for me. I'm not really sure why I would invest 4 hours of my time to do that. So anyhow, get that filled up and then you can test your system. Your system will run perfectly at that point and you should be good to go. That is how you change out the AC compressor in a 2014 through 2019 Corvette Stingray, Z06, Grand Sport, ZR1. In the Z06 and the ZR1, keep in mind the factory supercharger does change the serpentine belt process, and because of the aero, it's a little bit more complicated to get underneath the vehicle, but I'm sure you've got it. If you have any questions, make sure you put them in the comment section below. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you want to continue to watch some of my horrible, dangerous videos, hit the subscribe button. I'll be sure to upload as often as I can. With that said, thanks a lot for watching. Again, I cannot stress, put the comments below. There's always questions, and there's always something that someone's figured out how to do better. So my way is not the only way. I just want to make sure that I'm providing somebody something, because there's other people out there that want to fix this crap out here without paying $1 zillion. With that said, thanks again for watching, and I'm going to catch you guys on the flip side.
Double-digit thousands.